classical conditioning is the foundation of understanding how our brains turn experiences into habits. It's a concept that affects everything from our daily routines to our deepest phobias. Get ready to uncover the hidden patterns that shape your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. At its core, classical conditioning is a learning process where our brains associate two stimuli, one that naturally elicits a response, like food making us salivate, and another that doesn't, such as the sound of a bell. Over time, the neutral stimulus, in this case the bell, can come to elicit the same response as the natural stimulus, saliva production, simply because they are presented together repeatedly. This fundamental concept was first discovered by Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist who was studying digestion in dogs. He noticed that his dogs would start salivating before he even presented them with food, merely at the sound of his footsteps or the clinking of dishes. This observation led him to design experiments where he rang a bell each time before presenting food to the dogs. Eventually, the dogs began to salivate when they heard the bell alone, demonstrating that a neutral stimulus could become associated with an innate response through repeated pairing. Pavlov's work laid the groundwork for understanding how our brains form associations between different stimuli and responses. His theories were later built upon by other researchers, such as John Watson and B.F. Skinner, who expanded our understanding of learning and behavior. Watson, for instance, applied classical conditioning principles to human behavior, suggesting that all behaviors, including emotional responses, could be conditioned through environmental factors. One of the most significant aspects of classical conditioning is its role in explaining phobias and anxieties. For example, consider someone who has a fear of spiders. This fear might not stem from any direct threat posed by spiders, but from an association formed after experiencing fear or discomfort in the presence of spiders at some point. Perhaps as a child, they saw someone else react fearfully to a spider, or maybe they had a particularly frightening encounter themselves. Through classical conditioning, the sight of a spider becomes linked with feelings of fear, even if the person logically knows that most spiders are harmless. In therapeutic settings, understanding classical conditioning is crucial for addressing such phobias and anxieties. Techniques like exposure therapy rely on the principles of classical conditioning to help patients gradually become comfortable with stimuli they previously feared. By controlled exposure to the feared object or situation in a safe environment, therapists can help patients recondition their responses, replacing fear with calmness. The evolution of our understanding of classical conditioning also highlights debates within the field. Some researchers argue that while classical conditioning explains how we learn to associate stimuli with responses, it doesn't fully account for the complexity of human behavior and cognition. Others have pointed out that cultural and social factors play a significant role in what we condition to and how, suggesting that classical conditioning operates within a broader context of learning and environment. In everyday life, recognizing classical conditioning can help us understand why we react certain ways to specific situations or stimuli. For instance, the smell of a particular perfume might remind you of a past love because your brain has associated that scent with feelings of happiness or nostalgia. This insight can also guide us in forming healthier habits and breaking unwanted ones by becoming more mindful of the associations our brains are making. Consider someone trying to quit smoking. The smell of coffee might have become linked with the desire to smoke due to years of drinking coffee and smoking together. Understanding this association through the lens of classical conditioning, the person could make a conscious effort to break this link, perhaps by finding alternative habits to associate with their morning coffee or by gradually exposing themselves to coffee without smoking. As we delve deeper into the realm of classical conditioning, it's essential to explore the nuances of how our brains process and store these conditioned responses. One crucial aspect is the concept of extinction, which refers to the process by which a conditioned response is eliminated when the conditioned stimulus is presented repeatedly without the unconditioned stimulus. For instance, if we go back to Pavlov's dogs, if the bell were rung multiple times without presenting food, the salivation response would eventually decrease and disappear. This concept of extinction has significant implications for therapeutic interventions, particularly in the treatment of phobias and anxieties. As I've mentioned earlier, exposure therapy relies on the principles of classical conditioning to help patients gradually become comfortable with stimuli they previously feared. However, a critical component of this therapy is ensuring that the patient is not repeatedly exposed to the feared stimulus without any relief or respite, as this could lead to a phenomenon known as spontaneous recovery. This is where the conditioned response, thought to be extinguished, suddenly reappears after a period of time. My colleagues in the field have also explored the concept of latent inhibition, which refers to the process by which our brains filter out irrelevant stimuli. In the context of classical conditioning, latent inhibition plays a crucial role in determining what stimuli we pay attention to and what we ignore. For example, if you're trying to condition a response to a specific sound, but there are many other distracting sounds present, your brain may initially have difficulty forming an association due to latent inhibition. The work of psychologist Robert Rescorla has been instrumental in shaping our understanding of classical conditioning, particularly in regards to the role of context and attention. His research has shown that the conditioning process is highly dependent on the context in which the stimuli are presented, as well as the level of attention paid to those stimuli. This has significant implications for how we approach learning and memory, as it suggests that our brains are not passive receivers of information, but rather active participants in the learning process. In everyday life, recognizing the role of classical conditioning can help us better navigate situations where our conditioned responses may be triggered. For instance, if you find yourself always feeling anxious when visiting a particular place, it may be due to a past experience that has conditioned your brain to associate that location with fear or discomfort. By becoming more aware of these associations and taking steps to recondition your response, you can work towards breaking free from these limitations. Consider the example of a person who always feels a strong urge to check their phone whenever they hear a notification sound. This behavior is likely the result of classical conditioning, where the sound of the notification has become linked with the anticipation of receiving a message or update. By recognizing this conditioned response and taking steps to recondition it, such as setting aside specific times to check their phone or implementing website blockers, the person can begin to break free from the constant distraction and develop healthier habits. Stimulus generalization refers to the phenomenon where a conditioned response is elicited not only by the original conditioned stimulus, but also by similar stimuli that share common characteristics. For instance, if a person has been conditioned to associate the sound of a bell with the presentation of food, they may also exhibit a salivation response to other similar sounds, such as a buzzer or a chime. This concept has significant implications for our understanding of how classical conditioning influences our behavior in everyday life. Consider the example of a person who has developed a phobia of spiders due to a traumatic experience involving a specific type of spider. Through stimulus generalization, this phobic response may be triggered not only by the sight of the same species of spider, but also by other similar-looking insects or even objects that resemble spiders. The work of psychologist John Garcia has been instrumental in highlighting the importance of stimulus generalization in classical conditioning. His research on taste aversion learning demonstrated how animals can develop a conditioned aversion to a particular taste or food after associating it with nausea or illness. This aversion can then be generalized to other similar tastes or foods, even if they were not directly involved in the original conditioning process. In therapeutic settings, understanding stimulus generalization is crucial for developing effective interventions for conditions such as anxiety disorders or phobias. By recognizing how conditioned responses can be triggered by a range of stimuli beyond the original conditioned stimulus, therapists can design exposure therapies that take into account the potential for stimulus generalization. This may involve gradually exposing patients to a variety of stimuli that are similar to the feared object or situation, in order to promote more comprehensive and lasting extinction of the conditioned response. Another critical aspect of classical conditioning is the concept of second-order conditioning, which refers to the process by which a neutral stimulus becomes a conditioned stimulus through its association with an already established conditioned stimulus. For example, if a person has been conditioned to associate the sound of a bell with the presentation of food, and then the bell is paired with a new stimulus, such as a light, the light may also become a conditioned stimulus capable of eliciting a salivation response. The implications of second-order conditioning are far-reaching, as it suggests that our brains are capable of forming complex associative networks between multiple stimuli. This can lead to the development of nuanced and context-dependent conditioned responses, which can be both adaptive and maladaptive depending on the situation. By understanding how second-order conditioning operates, we can gain insights into the ways in which our environments and experiences shape our behaviors and emotional responses. In everyday life, second-order conditioning can manifest in subtle yet powerful ways. Consider the example of a person who has developed a conditioned response to a particular brand of coffee due to its association with pleasant memories or social interactions. Through second-order conditioning, other stimuli that are associated with this brand, such as the color scheme or packaging, may also become capable of eliciting a positive emotional response. In conclusion, our exploration of classical conditioning has revealed the profound impact that associative learning can have on our behaviors, emotions, and perceptions. By recognizing the ways in which classical conditioning shapes our daily lives, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As you reflect on the role of classical conditioning in your own life, consider this. What associations are you unknowingly reinforcing, and how might you harness the power of conditioning to create positive change? That's all for today's Psych with Sigmund. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.